So I finally had a decent game in an Italian destroyer. It really feels like it's taken quite a while. We're on to the tier 9 at this point, finished up with the tier 8 grind, and I really didn't enjoy it. But as far as the tier 9 goes, a lot of people are under the impression this is the worst of the line. Personally, so far, I have to disagree. I like the tier 9 much more than the tier 8, but that might just be down to lack of experience with this thing so far. I still got a long ways to go towards grinding out the tier 10. I really think the best part about the tier 9 so far is the alpha damage. You get bigger guns here with a better reload thanks to the 6th upgrade slot, so it feels to me like the DPM, the damage output, is much better. You're going to see a lot of 4,000, 4,500 salvos out of this ship, assuming that we connect our sap shells into parts of the ship that aren't saturated. That's one of the weakness, of course, with sap is the damage dramatically decreases as soon as you're hitting saturated parts of a ship. So superstructures, the bow, the stern of a lot of ships, they saturate very quickly. So we're trying to go after ships that have upper belt armor that we can pen. So here, the North Carolina would be a candidate for that. Not the Vladivostok or the Bismarck, though. So we only have the superstructures to really go after on those two ships. But the torpedoes, if we manage to land a few, don't do a lot of damage, right? They're really, really low alpha, low speed, but they have okay range. This ship, I mean, it's still an Italian DD, so it feels really, really strange to have weak torpedoes, decent guns with very little range, right? We had a 6,000 damage salvo on that NC there. Pretty amazing. The 4,000, and then I do an extremely poor job of dodging. So we lose a ton of our HP to start with. That's really the weird thing. Perhaps I'm used to playing Russian DDs, right? It feels a little like maybe a Tashkent type of ship where you have, 6 guns, two turrets in the front, 1 in the back. You're reasonably fast. It seems a lot like a Tashkent, except you don't have the range. It's really weird. So you got to make use of these smokes. You got to make use of the short duration speed boosts that do boost the speed quite a lot, making you a little bit less predictable to hit. But overall, I still don't really have a solid way to play these ships. I don't really know what they're supposed to do, but be a challenge, I guess. They do feel like a challenge. If you're playing these ships, you've got them, and you've never played the Russian DD line or the French DD lines, I would definitely recommend you give them a go. I think you'll find that they are much, much easier to play. The real challenge here is when people start to run away, it's very, very difficult to get any damage. These torpedoes are going to run out before they even reach these targets since they're not quick enough. Even though they do have range, if people are running away, they don't catch up to any targets very quickly. And since we don't have a lot of gun range, chasing for damage is very, very difficult since we have to get even closer when people are running away just to lead them enough to hit their ships. So even though this thing does do pretty well in this game, it's very, very challenging in higher tiers as we get to more passive games, right? I think we've all experienced those extremely passive games. This one, people decided to push in a little bit more. You notice the Vladivostok tries to turn in a little bit more. Well, the ACAP has just been a brawl, as we can see. Unfortunately, we weren't on that side to take advantage of that. But Tier 9, Tier 10, super ships, mostly it's a lot of passive games. So we have to really, really work for the damage that we're going to get. So playing passive, playing a little bit more standoffish in the early game, trying to save that HP for late game can be a good way to do things. Although, of course, then you have to worry about blowouts and being a non-factor in those games completely. As you can see, the damage output isn't great against angled DDs, but as soon as he opens up and gives us an angle, then we're going to get a decent salvo off. Although the Unicum mode does trade out with the torpedoes there. SAP is a tough ammo type to use effectively against angled destroyers because oftentimes it's going to do really, really good damage, but you get 1 or 2 salvos where they start bouncing and all of a sudden your DPM just drops off a cliff, and it's very, very hard to take those DD engagements then. At least here we are getting decently high HP for the ship, right? We get 24, nearly 25,000 HP. Even though the ship's big, it has very little range, so it's very easy to hit. At least we have enough HP that I feel like I can play a little bit more aggressive and at least take some risks. No heals though, like we see on the tier 9, tier 10 Russian DDs, right? They suddenly start to get healing, I mean tier 8 as well, and it's really, really nice to have that extra little bit of healing for that playstyle. So I often compare these to Russian DDs, so I really do think that the playstyle has to be different than Russian DDs, because it's just worse in every way. So I'm going to try to play a little bit more aggressive. I'm going to try and maybe even drop AFT, right? On my commander build, I'll show you that at the end of the game, but I do have AFT still, trying to take extra gun range where I can. Maybe I'll drop that in favor of just trying to full send it in and kill destroyers. That's something that is extremely powerful, right? Something that wins a lot of games is just going after DDs and taking them out. You gain so much map control, you deny the enemy team a lot of vision, and of course, you gain a lot of cap advantages that way as well. It can be a really, really solid way to win games. But yeah, it's going to take some experimentation. Again, let me know what you think in the comments below of the tier 9 or even the tier 10. How you've been playing them to some success, because I would like to know. Even though this is a relatively decent game, I still don't feel all that confident in the ship yet. I don't really have that play style that I know I'm going to go try and play every map, where I see a map, I see the matchmaker, and I know what I'm going to do. I really don't feel like that. I load in and I think, okay, how do I make this ship work now? That's really what it comes down to. Now we're trying to finish off the Vladivostok, so I pop my smoke screen so I can play a little bit more aggressive. Notice we're 7.5 kilometers away from an Iowa here, just to have the gun range to finish off that Vlad. But the damage output's good until the saturation comes into effect, right? 4,000 damage salvos every 4.5, 5 seconds is really, really, really solid. And that's going to bump us up over 100,000 damage this game already. This one's coming down to the wire, so it's given us a lot of time to farm. In some of those blowouts where the games are over very quickly, sometimes even within the first 5 minutes the games can be decided. Yeah, it's a little difficult when your ship doesn't have the DPM to keep up. As we're pushing into this Iowa, I do make a bit of a mistake here, overestimating my concealment. The ship doesn't have the best concealment either, so we're actually going to end up getting proxy spotted by this Iowa. I believe it's like 6.9, 6.8 kilometers, something like that. It's not a very stealthy ship either, given how low the gun range is potentially. But as we see this Iowa traveling forward on the minimap specifically, there's no way he can turn in time. He's going to ground. So that's why I'm going to end up putting my torpedoes and hoping that he's going to reverse. I put him just to miss this island, and sure enough, he does end up grounding. So hopefully, if he does end up reversing, we are able to take him out. I'm going to go behind this island, though, at this point, since I don't really want to take an engagement with the Iowa. The points are incredibly close. The caps are really close as well, so I don't really want to throw away all of my HP at this point. My team does a good job of cleaning things up in B, so there's really nothing to worry about at this point, but at the time when I went around this island, I was concerned that my team would melt and then I'd have to do something to win the game. And sure enough, the Iowa does eat enough torpedoes to go down, and then it's just the cleanup on the Hipper. But here, as we can see, the Hipper's running away from us, so I really can't start shooting at him until he turns broadside. It's very difficult to get damage when you're having to chase it. So I feel like I got a little bit lucky this game to already have 130, 140,000 damage. I don't think this is going to happen very often where the enemy team runs away from this ship and it's still able to get damage. In fact, we're already picking up a little bit more on this Hipper, maybe even up to 150,000 damage. That's a great game in any tier 9 destroyer. So for it to happen in maybe one of the weaker ones, I feel pretty good about that. But again, I'm still not all that confident here. I'm more excited after this game to try out the tier 10 and play this Italian DD line some more. I really hadn't had a match like this yet where I felt like, okay, these ships can work. I really needed that to get the motivation to finish up this grind. So in the future, we're definitely going to have the tier 9 grinding experience video where I talk about the experience getting up to the tier 10. And then of course I'll play the tier 10 and see how that thing is in the future. As for the build, I am still trying to make this dazzle gimmicky play work, where I take engagements with other destroyers or cruisers or battleships at closer range, and then for that first 15 seconds, it's very hard to hit this ship. 20% dispersion is quite a lot. And then once that dazzle has run out, then I can pop my smoke screen to reset dazzle and go dark. Hopefully whoever I'm farming is still spotted. And then once the smoke screen disappears, then dazzle re-engages, and I get another 15 seconds, and maybe I use my speed boost to speed away, maybe outside of my gun range, and go dark again. I know that sounds very complicated, and that's because it is. I really haven't been able to make it work exactly how I planned in theory yet, but that's kind of the idea behind this build. I think that it's possible that it's just not going to ever work like that. It really does seem like wishful thinking to me. So I think a better build is probably to drop Dazzle and run Fearless Brawler, or even run Main Battery and AA Specialist, allowing you to have better reload. I think that could be a much more valuable use of points. 5.3 second reload base here. You saw with Adrenaline Rush on around half HP, I was getting around a 4.5 second reload. So it's really not too bad on the reload front now. And the alpha damage is much, much better. Over 3,000 on this sap, 135mm sap with 38mm pen, right? We're able to pen a lot of battleship armor at that point, and if we're catching broadsides, that's 4,000 to 5,000 damage every 5 seconds, which is really, really good. And most of that is, again, thanks to Main Battery Mod 3, right? It's kind of carrying the reload here. If we didn't have this 6th upgrade slot, it would feel rough, just like the Tier 8. But that's the equipment that I'm using, and that is the commander that I'm trying. I'm probably going to change it as I'm grinding towards the Tier 10. Maybe try and get something a little more consistent, a little less gimmick focused. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.